Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Tony with RcHelpDotCom. Today's video, we're going to be working on this little bitty guy. This is the ESC out of the XK A430 airplane, the Edge A430, whatever you want to call it. The problem is, I don't know if this is a 10 or a 12 amp because you order one thing, you get another thing, read the reviews, and that's what they tell you. However, this thing has, just absolutely horrible soldering job on it. The wires, they didn't even color code the wires correctly. They color coded these correct to what that little wire is supposed to be, but they did not color code these little wires. I don't know why. It has double voltage regulators sitting on top of it, but one of them, the one on top, isn't even active. So let's go ahead and dive up underneath the microscope and we will take a closer look at what I'm talking about. As you guys can see, grab my little pokey bit here. The insulation is completely burnt back on these wires. Now, on the underneath side, we were playing with this a little bit over on Twitch on where we were live streaming this, and there was a little bitty solder ball, and it was right under here. I just touched it and it come loose, and then it got lodged over here. Guys, check these things, because if that solder ball would have gotten on these pins, it could have easily burnt this thing up. Now, one thing I would like to add, all of these solder joints, all of these solder joints, these solder joints, all the little small components are fine. But once you get over into this, oh my God, look at this. This is two of the exact same, I think. I haven't actually taken this off yet. But these are two of the exact same voltage regulators. 5 volts. It takes in battery voltage, converts it to 5 volts. You have power coming in, you have a ground, and then this is 5 volts out. And then this is obviously just a ground lug, but that pin's not even connected. So this top one's not doing anything. And I think the only thing they used that for was as a heat sink. Your guess is as good as mine. So without further ado, what we're going to do, we're going to take off both of these. We're going to take off all these wires. We're going to take off this electrolytic capacitor. We're going to take off the power wires, and we're going to take off these motor wires, not necessarily in that order because this one's going to be last. I want to clean up all these pads. I want to make sure I clean up where these capacitors go, including on this side, this capacitor here, and just clean everything up and make it look better. I don't want all of this stick out that could short out. You know, maybe a stray wire gets in here and shorts across here. Your plane goes down. Maybe something comes in here and shorts across. And I don't want those bare wires. Nothing I can really do about these, but kind of is what it is. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get these wires off. I will be using the KSGER. It is just a T12 soldering station. You guys can see the tip that I'll be using here. Just a standard KU style tip. Let's do it. So one of the reasons that I really love this soldering iron, you guys will hear the beep, but it's going to beep and then it'll beep again. So I'm going to turn it on. All right, it's on. It's heating up. This thing was at 25C. And it took that long to heat up. That is why I absolutely love this little soldering iron. If you guys want to see a better look, that's it. And right there's the iron that I'm using. Absolutely awesome iron. I will be doing a review on it. If you guys have anything specific you want to see on it, you guys just let me know. All right, we're back underneath the microscope now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little Amtech flux, because flux makes everything better. And we're going to go ahead and pop them 3 wires off right there. Now if those wires are off, let's put a little bit more flux down here. Not a lot, little dab will do you. Go ahead and grab the positive, pop it off. Grab the negative, pop it off. And then do the same thing for the electrolytic capacitor. I think I'm gonna go ahead and leave this capacitor on. I know you guys couldn't see that. This is really hard working on this small stuff. But I think I'm gonna leave this capacitor on the board, and we're gonna clean that up a different way. But for now, flip this over. We need to get these wires off. Once again, a little bit of flux. You know, put a little bit of tension on it. Don't burn yourself if you guys are actually going to do this. All right, there we go. Get off. There's that one. And there's that one. This is really hard to do underneath a microscope. I haven't done many videos under a microscope. Now I know you guys are wondering, you know, if whenever you put this thing back in, you know, how are you going to get this polarity right? Well, one, it's marked with a W right there. And two, the PWM, the signal wire, is on the same side. And the red was in the middle. It makes it really easy. So now what we're going to do, we're going to use a little bit of this little soldering wick, which I think this is either 1.5 or 2 millimeter soldering wick. And we're going to wick all that solder off of those pads. Let's go ahead, a little bit of solder, a little bit of flux. This wire does get extremely hot, extremely fast. They sell a holder, and I'll go ahead and go to an overhead view. They do sell a holder, but as you can see, it doesn't really do much. It just melts. All right. I'm gonna try to keep this in frame for you guys. I know it's kind of blown out. That's just this freaking camera. This microscope is not the most expensive microscope on the market. You like that. Go ahead, flip it around. Take a look at this side. And we can go ahead and take some off of this. Oh my God. Amtech flux is extremely sticky, so just be ready for that. Soak up some of this solder that's on here because there is a boatload of it. The thing is starting to get really, really hot. Okay. Then we'll take a look. Let's add a little bit more flux. We'll see if we can't clean this little guy up right here. Yeah, so pretty. Okay, what the hell is all of that? All kinds of nasty crap coming out of that. I'll tell you what, we're just going to go ahead and take him off. I didn't like all that crap that was coming out from underneath it. Some solder wick. Go ahead and clean those pads up because I want to look at this pad. Not really seeing anything. Okay. So we've got those pads cleaned. We got these pads cleaned. Clean enough anyway. Yeah, it's just solder. Okay. I was beginning to think I was a little bit of corrosion. Alright, and here is the horrible side. Look at this. Oh my God. Alright, let's go ahead and clean up this other side. And I'm putting flux on there because it helps it flow into this wick way easier. That's getting really hot. So that did take a pretty big chunk of it away. Clean that tip off real quick. We'll come over here, touch this. That one I can live with. I don't like that solder bridge right there. Looks like that bridge is gone. And now, for the start of the show, that big abomination right there. Yeah. So what we're going to do here, we're actually going to wet these with what I know is leaded solder. If they have any lead free in here, which I know they don't, but if they do, this will soften it up to where the hot air can take care of it just a little bit better. So we'll just go ahead and touch it. There we go, perfect. We'll go ahead and touch it. There we go, perfect. Spin it around. Put it in frame. All right, there we go. All right, so for this, what we're going to use is a hot air gun. We're going to try it. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to try it. So back underneath the microscope. I am running this at 300 degrees Celsius. Let's see if it actually works. Where are all the components? Okay, bottom right. So I'm just going to try to grab the top one right now. All right, let's go ahead and heat it up and get that second one off of here. And that beeping you're hearing is a soldering iron going to sleep. Okay. All right, so now we're just going to take a look at this. Make sure there's no bad pads or anything. Everything to me looks actually way better than I expected it to. So I need to flip it around. And we're going to go ahead and wick off all these pads. After, of course, we put some flux on there. And frame it. Alright, here we go. Holy crap. This thing's really hard to hold and do this. I think we're going to hit these pads one more time as well. Okay. And I am going to be cleaning up these little jagged edges here on the edge as well. Not for any particular purpose other than just to get rid of them, and I'll just go ahead and do that off camera. Black spot on that big pad right there that I want to get off. Yeah, I want to get rid of that capacitor. These capacitors don't have a polarity, so there's no problem with actually taking them off and putting them on the wrong way. So grab a little bit more flux, throw that on there. All right, now we're going to go ahead and take a soldering wick, apply heat, and get as much of this solder soaked up as we possibly can. Ooh, that's hot. Yeah. That'll wake you up for sure. Because I did take a good amount of that solder off. So now if that side's hot, let's see if we can't heat this thing up real good and pop it right off. Of course, I probably didn't get any of that on video. Now you guys remember, the chip side, this chip, is the side the power wires are on because that's the side the big capacitor goes on. Alright, there's still a good amount of flux on there, so we're just going to go ahead and use the solder wick and try to wick this up if we can actually get it on there. Ruh-roh. Just move that little guy. And so since we knocked off that little capacitor, maybe a resistor, not sure, we're going to see if we can't use a little bit of hot air and get him back on there. That'll be good enough. Alright, so on this, because there is so much solder, basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to touch the soldering tip to this. I'm going to get it molten, and then I'm just going to kind of tap it down on the edge of the soldering iron. I will come over here to where you guys can kind of see. No, I don't really care about the finish on this disc, so heat it up, let it slip. That works too. It just puts soldered balls everywhere. It was not supposed to slip. And then now, I'm stuck. Now you can see we don't have anywhere near as much solder on that thing. So I am going to try to flip. Oh my god, this thing is so sticky. Flip it around and grab it like that, and then we're going to do the exact same thing on those other two. So we're going to hold it up, heat it up, slam it down. Alright, we're going to go ahead and clean these legs up real quick. I guess I can go over here where you guys can actually see it. I'm just running my soldering iron across the legs, just making sure everything looks good. Grab the other one, check how much solder's on there as it flips away. Okay, we'll go ahead and do these first then. So this one was on top. I'm just going to go ahead and leave all that solder that's on there. Go ahead, grab the legs like that. Then we're going to do the same thing. Do the same thing to this guy here. See if we can't get the rest of that solder off. All right. So now I'm going to take a vote. We are doing all of this live on Twitch for all you guys at YouTube. By the way, if you're not subscribed, guys, click that subscribe button and be sure to ring that bell so you get notifications whenever we put out new videos. We are doing this live on Twitch. Link down in the description if you guys want to come over, give us a follow, and see us do this in real time. We have a good time. So I'm going to ask the Twitch audience now whether or not I am going to connect this center pin on the top one. It was not connected before, but I'm going to leave it up to all the Twitch followers as to whether or not we connect it up. You guys on YouTube will find out here momentarily. Alright, so we went ahead and took a vote in the Twitch chat, and they voted to connect the center leg. And Mr. Randy actually reminded me that we had this trace running right here. So the 5-volt out is the same as what I thought was a ground load. This is actually 5 volts. And I did a continuity test on the chip itself, and it does have continuity between them two. So the top one was connected, so there's no reason not to go ahead and connect the top center pin. But what we're going to do now is we're going to use some of this stuff. And this, if we go up here to the big screen, is cheap Chinese solder paste, basically. And we're just going to squeeze a little bit out and use just a tiny amount on this thing. And we're going to use hot air to solder the bottom one on. We still have to use regular solder to put the top one on though. Oh, that's too much. Too much. We found out what happens when we put too much on whenever we were doing the flight controller. All right, there we go. There we go. Grab that little sliver there. And there we go. All right, go ahead and grab our chip. Set it down on there. Grab our hot air. And let's watch some magic, guys. Oh no, it's spreading out. It's going everywhere. Oh no, it's touching. It'll be fine, I promise. Yoop, yoop, yoop. Perfect. And that is how easy it is to use solder paste. God, I love that stuff. All right, so now we're going to grab the second voltage regulator. And I know people are going to ask in the comments here on YouTube. By the way, YouTube, if you're not subscribed, click subscribe, get subscribed. Ring that bell. It's greatly appreciated. The reason they have these things stacked on top of each other is it's like wiring batteries in parallel. It keeps the same voltage, but it doubles your amperage. And on these particular ones, it just so happens to be 1 amp. All right, so we got to set down on there. We do have solder on there. I'm just going to throw a little bit on the tip of my soldering iron after I turn my soldering iron back on because people were griping about it. All right, and now I'm going to add a little bit of solder to my soldering iron. Take our tweezers, hold down that top regulator, touch it, make sure it heats up both of them. There we go. Not anywhere near as much solder as was on there. All right, I'm just taking a look at these legs, making sure they're all touching, and they are. Once again, for the second time, go in, touch it. These don't take very long to heat up at all. A little more solder. All right, let's take a look. Looks pretty good. All right, so I just tried to solder that big capacitor on. I ended up taking that small one off, and I don't want a solder bridge here. I don't think it'll matter, but I just don't want to take that chance. And because we're having to hold solder on our soldering iron for so long, I do want to add a little bit of flux because, yeah, a little flux never hurt anybody. That's actually a lot of flux, but it'll be fine, I promise. We have plenty of solder on the board itself, so I don't need to add any to my iron now. I do need to clean my iron off. And stick it down there, touch it. That needs to go over a little bit more. There we go. Perfect. Come over here to this side. Yep, looks pretty good. Got some flux over there. Touch it. So pretty. Come back to this side. Touch it. Draw it out. Pretty. Now comes the fun part. We get to try to put this little guy back on. That could be easier said than done. So let's see if we can't turn this thing around, because that capacitor is not sitting down there level. So I am going to use a little bit of hot air. You gotta go slow when they're not down on there very well. All right, a little bit of hot air. Top one sucked in real good, and of course it went the wrong way. So now that capacitor is on, we'll flip it over and we'll try to put this second capacitor on here. Do that. See, they're gonna burn my finger? Nope. Okay, we're good. We're gonna add a little bit of solder to the center pad. The other two pads have absolutely nothing on them. So this capacitor here, as you can see, it's got a lot of crap on it. I'm just gonna take and touch the soldering iron to it and get all that excess off. Bend that down. All right, that looks pretty good. A little bit of solder, get some frame, add a little bit of solder to this side. Look at that. 30. Alright, so now we need to verify negative and verify positive, and go ahead and put our electrolytic capacitor back on here, and then we're going to put our power wires back on. On the electrolytic capacitor, you're going to see a stripe. The stripe is going to be your negative, so our negative is going to go over here to that side. However, if we look at this, I think I can actually get the legs even shorter, you know, bring them up here like this. So go back to the big screen. I'm going to take this and kind of bend these legs over and then bend them up. So lay the leg over and then bend it up. So that should give me enough to where I can get this capacitor sucked up real nice and tight, and I can cut off quite a bit of those legs. We're going to go ahead, nip them off. We're going to verify negative. Again, right there, negative's on your bottom. Grab our soldering iron that went to sleep, put a little bit of solder on the soldering iron. Try to hold it down with one finger and solder with the other and not burn yourself. Let's see, actually I can cut even more off. Yeah, I think I need to. I don't like that sticking out that far. Alright, add a little bit of solder to the soldering iron. Try to hold the board with one finger. Try to use the other finger to push it back into view. Verify negative. Go ahead and solder it on. Then we'll come over here. Apply a little heat. Solder that side on. Alrighty. Now we do still have to add a wire to this, so I didn't add any solder. We will be adding solder whenever we put the power wire on there. But as you can see, that electrolytic capacitor is stuck up way closer than it was, way less likely to have something fall in there and actually short it out. Alright, so got those trimmed off. As you can see, the positive has a little bit more than the negative. That ain't going to make no difference. Now I'm going to tin these up, and the way I tin these is I just hang them off the edge like this, grab the soldering iron, add a little bit of solder to the iron, touch it to the wire, and then touch the solder to the wire, and it'll tin it almost immediately. Come back over here. Remember where your negative is. Alright, we have verified negative. Put that wire right there. A little bit of heat. Actually, you see the way? Now right there is a perfect example. Do you guys see how that domed up right there? That is what you don't want to happen, and that is what happens when you run out of flux. So, try this once again for the second time. Alright, melt that solder, get it in there. Look at that. That right there is what flux does. Perfect. Because it happened on that side, I am going to put a little bit of flux on this side. Get in frame. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. If I can get all my angulations right. Now that one actually needs a little bit more solder, and it's going to pop off when I do this. Just like that. Put it back on, put it back in frame, put it back on there, a little bit of heat. Wow. I need to actually look at it instead of trying to do it through the screen. And there we go. All right, so now, thanks to Twitch chat, I never even noticed this one was kind of crooked. And you know what? We're going to try some hot air on that one. We're going to try to come in at an angle to it. A little bit of Amtech. Come on, baby, pop into place. There we go. How do you like that magic? I love it when they pop into place like that. All right, so now I'm asking the Twitch chat if they are satisfied that that is now straight, even though the other one's not straight. The other one is just going to have to stay that way. All right, so whenever we took all this off, as you can see, we got the W here. That's going to be your white, and it's going to be pinned out exactly like a servo plug is. So you got white here, which means red is always here, and then obviously black is going to be here. So it doesn't really matter because this is just a servo plug. But as you can see, I have marked it. That way I know what polarity to go back with. And yeah, we are going to cut some of this wire off. That is way too much wire. All right, so I thought I'd give you guys just a little bit better look at how I do tin these things. A little bit of solder on the soldering iron, touch it to the wire, touch the solder to the wire, and that's it. That's all there is. All right, so what I want to do now is just go ahead and tin these up. A little bit of solder, that fast. You don't want to keep heat on these because you'll burn all the flux away, and then yeah, we still need flux because we still need to actually put the wires on. All right, so this is incredibly hard trying to get it on video, frame it up, do everything, but as you can see, we have significantly shortened the wires. Now we're just going to touch it, heat it up, let go of it. That quick, that purdy. You don't see the big dome. You're not making a mountain here. And now that I've cut all these, I know that it's actually going to be straight. Now see here, as much stick out as there was, it was really easy to come over here and touch this chip. Now though, I'm not going to touch that chip. Give it a tug test. It passed. Put the black on. Touch it, and that's it. So right here are the wires that went to the board that actually plug in to the receiver. I think I can do a little bit better than that. But these things, the insulation does melt back like this really bad. And as you can see, I mean, they just melted the ever-loving crap out of it. So I think I can do a little bit better. We'll go back up here to the big cam. And I'm going to do the exact same thing I did on both the other wires, and that's straighten them out, and we're going to shorten them up just a little bit. Nice straight cut, perfect. And then obviously strip them back. Now one thing to note here, this was wired wrong whenever we took it off. I have already corrected the pinout down here on the plug. So anybody that was worried about, you know, the pinout being wrong, it's right, I promise. All right, a little bit of solder on the soldering iron. We have our black wire. We're just going to touch it right there. A little bit of heat. Give it a tug test. Perfect. As you saw there, the insulation went back a lot. But now we can take our cutters and go ahead and just cut off what we don't need. All right, lay it back down there again. Little solder, little heat. It sucked right in. Give it a wiggle test. See how it's wiggling there? Perfect. All right, let's take a look at this one. That one doesn't have much on it either. So I'm going to do the exact same tinning process on the white wire that I did on the red one. So now we need to tin this pad because that pad right there has no solder on it. So a little bit of solder, touch the pad, that's all we need. All right, so this one here, we're gonna have to kind of hold it at an angle because of the electrolytic capacitor. Touch it. That is all we need. Still nice and shiny. It doesn't have that dull look. Give it a nice wiggle, nice tug test. And guys, this ESC is done, man. So guys, I hope that helps you out. You know, if you have this little A430, pull this ESC out of the plane and take a look at it. These wires on this little bitty plug right here, which is what we just got done soldering, I did not like the way they looked at all. One, they were wired completely wrong as far as color coding goes. They had it correct in the plug, but I was about to take it, rewire it to the color code, and I was about to put it into that receiver right there. If I would have done that, I would have blown up a $50 receiver, and it would have been because they were too lazy to color code it, even though they color coded these over here. As far as this center 5-volt leg sticking up in the air, it really didn't matter because this is the same 5 volts right here. So, and there's a trace that goes all the way across over to here. I checked continuity between the center pin and this leg here, and they had continuity on the chip itself. So that leg being up is not a big deal. If it's up, you can leave it up. You're still getting 2 amps out of this. And I was wrong. They were not using this as a heat sink, which I thought they were, and I thought they were crazy for doing it, and I'm glad to see that there was actually 5 volts back here. So guys, if this video did help you out, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, click subscribe, ring that bell. That way you get notifications whenever we upload these. And click on the link down in the description. Come on over to Twitch, and you can watch us do these live. I want to thank everyone for watching. See you guys in the next video.